Move on to other news. We move away from that launch. A non-profit organisation now, Dear South Africa, has filed an urgent application with the Pretoria High Court asking it to declare the extension of South Africa's lockdown illegal. It says that the extension of the Disaster Management Act in the middle of last month was irrational, unlawful and unreasonable. To discuss, we're joined by the Managing Director of Dear South Africa, Rob Hutchinson. Mr. Hutchinson, thank you for being with us. Tell us your stance, and are you not worried about surging coronavirus cases in the country, which is what the ostensible rationale for the lockdown is?
Good evening. Thanks for having me on. Well, look, the information that we had right at the beginning of the lockdown some 8 months ago was uncertain. We weren't sure of how the healthcare systems would be able to cope with the projected number of or influx of cases, and that was also based on models that have turned out to be wildly inaccurate in all predictions and overestimated in many circumstances. Right now, 8 months later, almost 9 months later, we are facing constant extensions to the original state of disaster based on the original reason to go into a lockdown. In our mind, that is irrational. We haven't seen the influxes that were predicted. Our healthcare facilities have not been overwhelmed in any way whatsoever, even during the first wave. So there are going to be spikes in the infection rates, but however, we shouldn't be looking at the infection rates as such. We should be looking at the fatality rates and the survival rates of cases and so on. And we're showing a 99.97% survival rate, which is exceptionally high. So,
although, can I stop you there? Some senior doctors are now saying that South Africa may have missed a whole lot of deaths. If you look at those excess deaths, so maybe the mortality rate was much higher. We just don't have records of exactly who died from COVID-19. Some actually saying we're in line with similar populations like the UK.
Well, there's two sides to that argument, and it goes around the classification of what was a COVID death or not. And the classification seems to have changed over time, and that's easily comparable to if you look at the flu statistics and flu deaths and related deaths from last season and compare them to this season. You'll see that it's no longer died from COVID or died from the flu, it's died with COVID or died with the flu. So,
but besides that, do you feel that? I mean, obviously you're spending money on this case. Do you feel it's justified? Do you feel that many South Africans are actually feeling locked down right now? A lot are just getting on with their lives. Economic activity is completely open, and a lot of things are open as well.
Yes, actually, well, that's the whole point of it. You see, we under a state of disaster, which is declared by the minister and government right in the beginning. It grants a single minister the almost absolute power over South Africa, and it violates many constitutional rights. We are currently still in that situation and still under those laws and or under those regulations. Therefore, the minister at any stage can return us to level 5 or level 4 or any other level without any justification whatsoever.
But she's not using that power.
She's not yet using that power, which would be the correct term. But anything can grant her that power. She can do it for any reason, and doesn't have parliamentary oversight in the decision making as such. Yeah. So what we requested.
But any decision can be taken to court. And maybe my final question for you is: do you believe? Well, how could you believe you will be successful in court? Because we know that cases like the cigarette ban went to the courts, and even there, government was successful. There have been protests in various places, but across the world, mature democracies accepting some degree of infringement on civil liberties because of what's going on.
Well, look, we were successful on 2 or 3 previous challenges. The one was the exercise window. We had that lifted, and that was attacking the regulations as such, so not the whole Disaster Management Act. The other one that we were successful on was the e-commerce. We managed to lift that ban as well.
How did you manage to lift it in court, or are you saying you're one of the many voices that were outraged by that?
No. We actually sent the letter to the minister and gave it until...
But there were many voices at the time saying it was irrational and not linked to the science at all, not putting anybody in danger. So maybe a different case?
Yes, well, that is exactly our argument right now. The current state of disaster is based on the original assumptions and the original science made to implement the original decision. The current situation is completely different. Therefore, we need to lift the current state of disaster, and then reassess. And then, if needs be, implemented, however, under parliamentary oversight.
Yeah. Final question, Mr. Hutchinson. In my experience, sort of the only thing being prevented right now are pretty big gatherings, things where people can transmit COVID-19, and that's something that doctors are actually worried about, super spreader events. Given that, is this really worth going to court over?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because we must remember that the original lockdown wasn't put in place to stop the spread of the virus. It was to prepare the healthcare facilities and give us time to address that and control the flow of alleged cases that might arise. However, that has all been proven incorrect, and we need to reassess the whole situation given the latest data.
All right, thank you very much, Managing Director of Dear South Africa, Rob Hutchinson. We take a short break. All your sporting action to come. Stay with us on The Full View.